Hello, people, and welcome back to another episode of the Tech of Tomorrow podcast, where we believe that the real tech of the future are the humans building that future. As usual, remember, hit the like button if you're on YouTube, leave a comment if you like it, ask a question to our guest in case he comes back. If you want the guest to come back, follow the show on Spotify, on Apple, and on Amazon because it helps me bring more and more cool people to the show, and it keeps me going and grinding to make this show happen because I love doing it. Our guest today is already a friend of the show, even though you haven't met him yet. So I will just start rolling with him. He's Alex Lee, and he's got quite an interesting journey to share with us. Hello, Alex.
Hey Seb, nice to meet you. How are you?
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you again. I'm doing great. So tell people a couple sentences about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I've got close to a decade of experience in sales and marketing. The last 4 years being in enterprise sales, generated over $4 million in revenue just in that. And now I run a company called DealClosers, where we act as a growth partner to companies, helping B2B businesses increase revenue from generating high quality leads all the way to the closure of pipelines. So we focus heavily on the sales velocity, not just the generating of leads where other lead gen companies do that. We have a strong focus on disregarding advertising and focus on, okay, what's the sales process? How can we increase conversions? And how do we shorten the sales cycle length so you can actually generate more revenue with the leads that you already get?
I like that. I like that because there's plenty of lead generation agencies. They tend usually to be run by pretty young people, and their
Yeah.
entire focus is just getting you more or less qualified leads. How do you see the how do you see the rise of all these young agencies and young agency owners?
Yeah, no, it's great. There's definitely a young generation coming up there going through the entrepreneurial journey. I've been an entrepreneur since I was about 15 as well. So it's great to see that, but it has caused a kind of a ripple in the market and a bad reputation because obviously some of them are inexperienced. They don't have the background in terms of actually generating leads. I've spoken to many CEOs where they've said, we've tried lead gen companies and they don't understand the ICP and they book calls, but they're not quality calls. So it doesn't technically count as a booked meeting, right? Which is a bit pointless, but they just like ticking their box saying, hey, we booked you 20 meetings this month, which is true, but probably four of them were actually relevant. So it has caused a ripple in the market, but also there's been a surge of lots of six-figure entrepreneurs who are 20 years old, where 10 years ago that was really difficult to get to.
It's true. I've seen they always have this promise. We will book you at least 10 meetings or 20 or 30, or you don't pay. The
Yeah,
catch is that you don't know if those meetings are with qualified leads. So if I get a meeting with your grandma, it's still a meeting, but it's not necessarily useful if I'm selling you a piece of software.
exactly. Exactly. I can give you a perfect example. I was speaking with a CEO of a compliance consultancy last week, and he said he employed a lead gen company for 6 months, and 50% of the leads, for some reason, he was getting would be pilots. And his target was chief compliance officers, not pilots of aviation.
Pilots.
Pilots, literally people that would fly planes. So that's the quality. And I asked him, why did you stick around for 6 months? And he was like, well, I could see they were young, so I wanted to support their business. And 50, the other 50% were good leads. So he was giving them more chances, but he had enough of speaking to pilots, I guess, as opposed to their ICB.
I wonder, I makes me really curious how the outreach was and what enticed a pilot to sign up for a product that was for compliance officers. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't go into too much depth. I assume they just bought a massive list on probably D7 leads finder and then sent it out to everyone.
I've talked often to CEOs that also hire lead gen agencies, and we deal with adjacent things. I do positioning, so the stuff I do makes lead generation easier, even though it's not lead generation. But I do notice too that the same opinion. People have
Yeah.
been burned a lot by lead gen agencies, and it came to a point that last year I was talking to a CEO in Bulgaria, and the moment we mentioned increasing lead gen, he thought we were talking about that kind of lead gen. And you could see his body language just shifted. He pulled back and he was, no, we stop it here if you're going to do lead gen. And on the
Yeah.
sales call, we went, wait. What happened here? Like, why did you react this way to lead gen? And he explained to us that people had been basically, some agency had been watering down and hurting his reputation by just hyper spamming
Yeah.
prospects. And that's what he found. So I did find that some CEOs prefer the term demand generation. That puts them at ease psychologically. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's an easy way to scapegoat the lead generation, but some CEOs, they've been in the game long enough. They know that's just the same thing. So they can still have the same reaction. But of course, lead gen is the main buzzword across YouTube and anything like that, where they're trying to educate themselves and getting more leads. But demand generation is the same thing. So I've not really seen much of a difference in terms of CEOs reacting to that. What I have seen is they are caring more about the pipeline. So pipeline optimization, etc., which is something that I've been focusing on. So they're actually looking to scale the entire thing and maximize their revenue. If you have a 10% close rate, which is quite terrible, honestly, you should be at least at a 20 to 25% close rate, and you have enough leads, then you shouldn't be saying, I need more leads or better quality. It's a closing problem, right? It's a
Mhm.
conversion rate problem. So there's a lot of things in the business where CEO should actually be focusing on more, or the head of sales, to boost the revenue as opposed to just hitting that lead gen level of, okay, let's get more leads through the door, because they just assume, okay, if I have 100 calls, if I get 200, I'll double revenue, which is reasonable thing to think, but it's a lot harder to get that extra 100 calls than improving your close rate by at least 5%.
How do you, let's get more technical because some people listening to this are going to be CEOs, actually, most of them, or they're going to be working in companies where they need to generate more revenue. So, how do you go about increasing the conversion rate first and then about shortening the sales cycle?
Yeah. So both actually go into the discovery, right? So it's really important to understand the prospect's pain points and attaching to them. And then at the end, creating that gap. A lot of salespeople are very surface level and they don't understand the sales cycle. So something that makes you convert more and also have a bigger deal size is attaching to the corporate objective. So most salespeople don't do this. And a corporate objective is usually a financial goal for the business. So let's say increase profit by 20% this year in 2025 or 2024, right? And then each C level, because you usually sell to a certain C level, it's that chief compliance officer, CFO, etc. But let's say you're selling to a CFO, the CFO needs to deliver against that corporate objective. So they have something that's called a mission critical priority. And with that is something, for example, okay, I need to reduce costs by 10% this year in order to hit this goal of 20% increase in profit. That's his contribution. So when you're selling to them, you need to understand these two things first and then start asking questions to see, okay, what's the focus area of the CFO? Because a lot of salespeople, they get happy ears and they know what they're selling and they attach onto more of a surface levels like, okay, we would love to have AI in the finance function, right? Which is a real buzzword. It will catch a CEO's attention or CFO's attention, but it doesn't necessarily lead to that, okay, 10% reduction in costs or 20%. So you need to focus on, okay, you need to do 20% reduction in costs. What do you need to do in order to get there? And then start building that gap and then start understanding, okay, what have they tried so far? What's not working? Their confidence level in it and starting building that gap so they have doubt in themselves and at the end achieving that. So there's 7 things I like to go through on the discovery to really build out my knowledge, but also that gap for people. So the first thing is current state, then it's the future state, and you can go both ways, right? Really depends on the prospect. Some open up more on the current state after you've discussed the future state. So, for example, we need to reduce costs by 100 million this year. That's a lot easier for them to say instead of saying, okay, how much have you reduced so far this year? It's a lot more direct, so people don't open up. Whereas if they say, okay, we need to reduce next year by 100 million, and you say, okay, how far away are you from reducing 100 million? They say, okay, we've only reduced about 10 million so far, so we have a 90 million gap. That already tells you their current state there already, or they say, oh, we're 90 million away from it. And then you already know their current state. So it's also about phrasing the question. After you know those two things, it's really important to build pain. So once you say, okay, how does that make you feel about your 90 million away from next year's goal, right? This has been a 3-year objective for you. And then they start building in deeper and just asking lots of why questions. A lot of salespeople are quite immature in terms of, okay, they say, well, I'm still confident in hitting it next year. Then they'll stop and then they'll move on to the next question, right? Whereas it should be like, okay, so why are you confident you only have a year to reduce by 90 million, etc. Most people don't do that. And then from there, you have to talk about cost questions, make it a lot more personable for them. Whether you're selling B2B or B2C, you need to have that cost. So whether it's saying something like, okay, what's the cost of you not achieving this goal, right? Is it personal? Is your job on the line? What's the cost of the business if you don't hit this 90 million reduction? Because then you can see, okay, the next steps of cost of inaction, that's when you're building out your proposal, you can be like, okay, if we deliver, you're going to avoid these uh, costs in the future of the business, right? Whether that be reputation, not being able to get a seed fund or raising revenue. And then from there, you should be asking questions about doubt. So making them doubtful about hitting their goal. So I've had many circumstances where I've asked these cost questions and I simply asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you on delivering this in the next year? And they say maybe a 7, 8. And I'd be like, okay, so what's stopping you from being an absolute 10? And then they go into more of their challenges, pain points, etc. And it creates that doubt. There's all these C-levels, they're intelligent people, right? So if you're creating doubt in their mind, they can actually build that gap more so that you can then sell your services. And then the last two things are easily finances and money. It's really easy for them to say we don't have budget, etc. But if it's a pain point related to the CEO's objective and you latch onto that, you can always make a proposal to the CEO. Since 2020, I've heard this, oh, I don't have enough budget. But if it's important enough to the business, they'll make the money for it, right? There's no pot of gold waiting for you to buy something. And then lastly is support. A lot of salespeople, they don't actually check whether this is the decision maker. They assume, okay, I've got the CFO because they've prospected them on LinkedIn. But it turns out there's a group CFO. The CFO still has to ask the CEO. So they never ask, okay, well, who's the decision maker in this process? And sometimes you can't get to the CFO or the chief compliance officer or chief supply chain officer, whatever they are. Sometimes you need to go to the director level or head of level. And you need to understand, okay, what does your boss care about so we can focus on that? Because the heads of, they always have their own smaller priorities. But then when you ask, okay, but what does your boss care about? They're like, oh, the boss cares about cost reduction, not about implementing AI. Okay, so let's focus on this and build a proposal towards that. And then this is how you all increase your deal values, the pain points, creates more urgency because you get more timeline. So focus on current state, future state, paying costs out, finances and support. You have such a strong discovery where you can just take on to then tailoring your proposals, demos, so they can really understand the value of your service. Because most people are cookie cutter, they ask the 5 questions that they need when they think, okay, this is perfect, now I can do my demo, you fit, and then that's it. Buy from me.
I love it because it's funny, right? We work in adjacent fields. We use a very similar process. And the whole point is taking what you're offering and bringing it from a nice to have to a must have. It's a necessity.
Right.
And I do see that mistake made very often by salespeople. It's just, let's say, what questions like, okay, what do you need? What this, what that, what this, what that, that second thing. They're checking items on a list, but they're not finding the reasons. And
Yeah.
just before this podcast, I was building out an ICP for a client, and I was exactly thinking about those things. What are their personal motivations to want this service? What you brought up with their boss is super important because sometimes for somebody that hires you, especially at a high ticket, the decision is putting their reputation on the line with the boss. So
Yeah,
you need to meet by meeting their boss's needs, you're meeting their needs, which is I need to look good, I need to do my job well, and I need to look like I know what I'm doing. Otherwise, it brings me trouble internally. So
exactly.
finding those motivations is key. And final thing I wanted to comment on is the cost question. When you ask what's the cost, is the sunken cost of what they're doing right now, the things that they are ignoring that keep compounding. Usually, I'm going to expose myself here. I hope not many people watch this episode now, but usually is when what I ask people at the end, when eventually they will ask for a price, right?
Yeah,
At some point during this sales cycle, the first thing I ask is, are you asking me for how much it will cost you to get this delivered to you? Or are you asking me about the cost of not taking this step?
yeah,
They usually go, of course, I'm asking you about how much how expensive it is. And they go, okay, I will tell you that, but first I will tell you what's the cost of not moving on with this.
yeah,
Bring back that first question that maybe happened 2 calls before or 1 call before about what's costing them. And then I bring up that pain again.
yeah.
And then I say the price.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really good approach of going about it. There's also another approach that I recently heard. It was from Alex Hormozy, where he positions it really simply, right? He was speaking with a business where they're making, I think it was 10 million per year, and their growth target is to get to 50 million, right? And he's like, okay, so every day that goes by or every year that you don't figure out how to get to 50 million, it's costing you 40 million. Our service is, let's say, 100K. Is it worth losing 100K or losing 40 million? Simple.
Yeah, especially if you have the results to back it up. There's no argument against that.
Exactly. Exactly. So a lot of people, they get latched onto emotionally on the price, but when you think about logically, okay, if this can actually get me this return or to this end result, that's what they need to be important on. And also they try to compete to the bottom, but there's always someone that will outcompete you on price and the same service for $100 instead of 10K. But at the end of the day, how good is that service? Right? Can they do that or will they harm your reputation like that CEO you discussed in Bulgaria?
I I agree completely on that. And if there's one of the first thing, especially with smaller companies that I change when I enter, is that mindset. Because some people are undecided on the price thing. How do we want, which is the whole question of my book, basically, are you Ford or Ferrari? How do you want to be perceived? And
Yeah.
yes, the assumption, especially in smaller companies or new business owners, is small price, more volume, more money. We don't have to go through the trouble of negotiating high ticket, not realizing that first of all, you don't have the infrastructure when you're small to handle the volume. And second of all, pricing is positioning. So everything that's too cheap, nobody expects any results from. So it's way easier to say no to something cheap because it's suspicious.
Yeah. And then people also flip and think that this is too good to be true. How's your service only $100, but you're making me 10K per month? So there's a catch-22 in the situation. So like you said, it's always about positioning, but that's why it's important understanding their pain points where they're trying to get to, so you can create that gap. If the cost is bigger than what they have to invest with your company, then it's a no-brainer. You just have to make it seem like it's a no-brainer to the prospect.
Yes, and I have an offer only for German companies that is too good to be true. I get that all the time. You just need to get it over the line. And it's funny to see that because there is that other side. When it is too good to be true, people immediately also pull back, like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah. But
Listen,
that's usually also a lack of education.
huh?
That's usually because of a lack of education. So
Yes.
one principle that I like to implement when I'm creating pipeline for my clients, because we do also do the lead generation, but we take a education-based marketing approach. So through keynotes, through webinars, inviting individuals and educating them on a new way of doing things. So on my LinkedIn, for example, I have a video around the old way of lead generation versus the new way of lead generation. And the old way was pretty simple, right? And it worked for 20 years on email, where it'll be like, hey, I solve X pain point. Here's a case study. Let's book in your time. But people have become a lot more sophisticated in their buying efforts. So there's a study that said about you need 7 hours of engagement with a business before you buy. So before people just assume, hey, here's an ad or an email, I'll assume you're going to buy from me. But now you need that engagement. So the new approach is offering lead magnets essentially, or value, without asking for anything. Soft call to action saying, hey, we generated a video for you that will help you generate 5 quality meetings a week, right? Do you mind me sharing? You send that over to them, they find it valuable. You can follow up saying, hey, how did you find the video? It was great, thank you. And then from there, you start sending them small little bits. Okay, I noticed that your company is doing X. Here's a webinar that we did that can support you with that. And then from there, invite them to a keynote. And when you're at the keynote, you can generate your expertise because you're acting as the expert. And from there, it's pretty simple to transition them into a close. A lot of businesses are still in the old way of, okay, let's have a meeting, do the discovery, do the demo, etc. What I found is you're already going to be giving them value at some point of the sales cycle. Give it to them at the start. So then they can build the trust, find you as a trustworthy individual. And then you can go through the sales cycle pricing. And at that point, they've already subconsciously viewed you as the expert. They know what you're talking about, etc. Where you can actually demand that higher price point without them saying, okay, but is this too good to be true? Because now you've educated them on how that's happening. And this also unlocks a wider market for yourself because there's something called the buyer's pyramid. There's only about 3% of people actively buying, searching, needing your products. And everyone's competing for those 3%. So 3 in 100 people are buying. So can you imagine 100 businesses targeting all 3 people? You can easily unlock the wider market by people that are open to it, which is about 6 to 8%, who are open to the idea. They've just not really considered it, which most buyers are in. And there's also another section of 30% of people don't even know this. So if you're educating individuals on that, you systematically build them more towards that 3%, but you're the only one educating them at that point. So they come to you as the expert, not go to somewhere else at the end.
We're giving a masterclass to people here. And the thing is, I love it because that's exactly the whole point of positioning, right? First, it starts with the client, starts with understanding them. Not what, you know what drives me crazy? Your traditional corporate ICP builders is like pains, gains, desires, and obstacles. And it's a matrix on a PowerPoint that nobody opens in 5 years. It's just useless. It's time your teams waste. Whereas if you truly know the ICP, you target only their pain points in their marketing. You stop talking about how cool you are, how many employees you hired, how many companies you acquired. You manage to become top of mind, and you give that free value. You manage to become top of mind. By the time that 3% is ready to enter the market, you're there already for them, which is the other thing. Some people think they can override the marketing process with just hardcore sales, but you could. It's just not optimal.
Yeah, you could. You could take 1,000 sales calls a month and still generate 1 million in revenue. But if everyone's educated and you can take 100 calls and do the same, it's a lot more optimized, right?
Yes, I mean, and I mean, you could also go to Scotland from London on foot, but you don't do that because you have a car. You could take a train, right? There's a lot of things we could do, but we don't do because it's just dumb to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And time is money at the end of the day for every business. So we need to optimize. We need to do everything in a quicker way. And one thing that I've been most shocked about when I speak with CEOs is when I say, okay, so why do people buy from you? 95% of people do not know why they
Yes,
have
I
sold.
love you for saying this. I have the same thing. I have actually this data piece. I call it 90%, but the reality is 98. But if I claim 98 on social media, people are going to think I'm exaggerating. If
Yeah.
I ask people what makes you different from your competitors or why people buy from you,
They,
98% don't know. It's
yeah.
clueless. Like, no.
Yeah. And one simple thing that we've done is simply when we partner with the company, we interview every single client that they currently have where they say, okay, we want more of this type of client. Say Fortune 500 clients, they produce 80% of our revenue. Okay, so let's interview all your clients and just ask them, not point blank, why did you buy? What were your pain points? And then you can reverse engineer the ICP from there and start creating your marketing material. Most people assume that this is the problem. They assume this is what they like. So they make marketing material and then they get a 2% reply rate and they wonder why they're not growing.
And it's so easy, right? You have clients, just ask those clients. They are
Exactly.
there. You serve them. Some of them are happy. What made them happy? You don't have to make it up on the go. You don't have to bring every time a new salesperson or a new marketer to try to figure out how to like reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Wheel is literally in front of you. Just move it.
100%. And the problem with bringing a new marketing and salesperson, they're a coin flip, right? And
Yes.
a lot of CEOs, they face the problem of the good ones, they're on six figures. That's a fact. If you're good, you're making six figures in sales and marketing. But a CEO likes to compromise and say, okay, I'd rather pay you 70, 80K, reduce our budget, but then that person's usually been an underperformer in their previous company. And that's why they're actually moving. Because the top performer, they're comfortable. I've met them, I've been in the companies. Unless they want to go start their own business, they stay there for 10 years. They know everything off the back of their hand and they're making six figures every year, guaranteed.
Yes,
Right?
because why would they move from a company? Why would a top performer move from a company? They already know exactly who they're selling to. There is their day to day. Getting commission becomes just part of their routine. They don't have to learn a new industry, learn a new ICP. It's just a good
Exactly.
position to be in. So if you're getting these bottom of barrel salespeople, yes, you could train them, but then we run into the other problem, which is do you have 6 months before you start increasing conversion rates because you're training this new person?
Yeah, exactly. And it's usually longer than 6 months. I've seen people the 6 month probation period, but
Yes.
people don't start closing until the 12th month because they've taken a chance on that. Because it does take a long time to learn a new process. And it's usually easier to just focus on your internal salespeople, give them minor training to really improve on that.
I remember I was once in this tech company and sorry, I started coughing for no reason. I was once in this tech company. They had like 5 industry verticals, and they hired this industry focus leader. Nice guy and everything. He was supposed to sell. We're not talking high ticket. We're talking big ticket, like massive deals. Average probably was 250K per deal. The sales cycle was for that company anything between 6 and 18 months. Huge
Wow.
sales cycle because they were completely unknown and they put no effort into getting some portion of the market to know them better. Now what happens is that this guy had a 6 month probation, and I meet him on month number 5 on the last week, and he's like hunched over his computer in this position, rubbing his forehead, and they go, "Yo, what's going on?" And he goes, I'm on my last week of probation, and I haven't sold a single thing in 6 months. And they go,
Wow.
fuck, they brought you in for that reason. They still kept him for 2 years, and
Yeah.
then he had to go.
So he never ended up crushing it or anything like that.
I think yeah, crushing it is not the word for sure. He did concretize some deals, he didn't crush it.
That makes sense. But that's usually on the company's end, because the sales training is not there. They bring on an expert that performed well somewhere else, but that's usually has a proper sales cycle, and they've not established that in the actual company. The sales enablement isn't there. There's no SOPs to follow. It's funny, I was speaking with an SDR that was one of my friends. They moved to a new company, and the company makes 600 million per year pounds, and each salesperson has to pay for their own sales navigator. Something that's really essential in any sales organization So they don't even have the other tools like the email sending software, the AIs that now are the top sales organizations coming. The most basic tools of a $600 million pound company, they don't even have sales navigator. And if they want to perform, they have to pay a lot. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And there's no
Mm.
actual sales process. They
That's
have
what
one
happened.
training
That's
and
what
that's
happened in that company. The guy didn't get any training. His onboarding was a mess. He was directly under the head of sales, who was completely into other things.
yeah.
So he was on his own. It wasn't even his fault. He just had to figure out every step on his own, and they didn't even give him a team. So he was leading himself into trying to crush 250K deals every 3 months. But it's a hard expectation to put on somebody.
Yeah, especially if you have to learn the industry, the company, the sales cycle. It's too much. There's literally dedicated people to be creating these training programs so people can be successful. You can't expect a salesperson to come in and figure it out on their own. You're just setting them up for no success.
Yes, which is what happened. By the way, this was a company pulling in 20 million a year. So we're not talking complete beginners.
Yeah, I mean, if you're pushing more than a million or two a year, you need to start thinking about optimizing the sales process because you're definitely leaving money on the table. If you're making about 1 to 2 million per year, you're definitely leaving at least 500K per year for your sales cycle on the table because you've not optimized. Your sales cycles are too long. 6 to 18 months is way too long for any sales cycle. That's usually something where it's like, okay, we don't have budget, but next year it comes in, and then that's what's happened. Unless you're talking about really massive pharmaceutical deals where it takes years for things to fall into place, it shouldn't be taking that long.
Yes, completely agree. And also, it's the same thing. It's the same data I found with positioning because it ends up affecting sales. You're leaving money on the table. If you have product market fit and you're pulling more than 1 million in revenue, you definitely could be making at least 25% more just through positioning. That's without taking into consideration sales pipeline optimization. That's without even going deep into deep marketing.
Yeah.
So you add all together, and they could be putting 50, pulling in 50% more revenue, 100% more revenue. In some cases, the improvements are dramatic.
Yeah. 100% agree.
You mentioned the growth partner model, right? You're
Yeah.
a growth partner for companies. I've heard that from two guys who used to live in London. Do you know them? Jordan and forgot the name.
Jake,
And
Jacob.
Jacob. Yes, you know them.
Yeah, I work with them very closely. We're friends. I visit them in Dubai.
They're great.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're great people. We've had very good conversations, especially with Jordan. I've had a few conversations. We've partnered on one thing as well, so working together. They're
You
great
know
guys.
Kiri too.
Who?
You know Kiri too, or Kyrie. He's in London. He still works with Jordan and Jacob.
No, I've not heard of them.
Damn, I need to intro you guys. You will love that guy.
Yeah, no.
I'll do that. Listen, you mentioned at the beginning the amount you pulled in sales and your career before. You were in Gartner, right?
Yes, correct.
Tell us more about that. How was it to work with such a massive, basically research and consulting company?
Yeah,
Give us an overview.
great company. The best thing about them is they practice what they preach because one of their verticals was helping sales teams improve sales enablement, sales training, etc. So I actually went for a very good sales training, and they do make you a top performing sales individual. And you could clearly see it. So I would have colleagues coming in who had 10, 15 years of sales experience in another SaaS or research advisory company. They come in, they struggle. And when I speak to them and they ask me, okay, how are you performing this well, etc., I would ask them, are you asking this X, Y, Z? And they're not doing it. They say, I've never been told to do this. And it's shocking because you assume someone of 10, 15 years of sales experience, they should be doing that, but you're actually ahead of them by just having 8 weeks of training, right? And then from there, just going through the process and actually having it engraved into you. So Gartner was a great place because they've really ingrained at the start, okay, this is the best SOP to follow. If you stick with it, move forwards, right? I had a really great sales manager where he told me, if you don't cold call, you're not going to be successful. And it was true. I started in a cohort of 16 individuals and I got a promotion within 3 months because all I did was cold call and all of them lacked because they weren't cold calling. When they started cold calling, they got their promotions and hit their targets before then, right? And at the start, I'll be honest, I did not want to cold call. My previous job, I used to do recruitment. I hated it. But then when they taught me the SOPs and how to do it, I started delivering sessions on cold calling at Gartner and moving forwards from there to other teams, other BDs, etc. So it's a great company to be in. Lots of knowledge there. They do practice what they preach. And obviously, you get the opportunity to have a big brand so you can speak with billion-dollar C-levels. So it's a good place to build up your confidence in sales. And once you've spoken to CFOs, chief supply chain officers of billion-dollar plus organizations, it's pretty much peanuts when you're speaking with anyone else, right? They're not really intimidated anymore.
It's wild to think that a company the size and the scope of Gartner is heavy on cold calling.
Yeah.
How, if you can share the information, how does that work? Because you're not selling to them on a cold call. So what's your goal? Where do you want to get a C-level mega executive? What's the next step after the cold call? Do you want to have a meeting, have an interview?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do
So
you pitch them? Because you don't pitch them on the service or the product.
no, so that's the main problem that most people would do, or they would have a long cold call. I've seen some individuals that I'm actually surprised they keep C levels on the phone for 2, 3 minutes. I'm not sure how they always get that time. But for me, you need it super simple and also create kind of a fear of missing out. So my approach is really simple. I'll call them, say, hey, I'm calling from Gartner. I'm just calling to find a better time to speak. You have a couple of seconds, right? The reason I was speaking was 3 pain points. I was like, for example, I'm speaking with other CFOs in the community where they're discussing digital transformation, AI, etc. Right? Three of the most common pain points for those CFOs. And this way it also helps me disqualify them. If these three things aren't there, then probably won't sell them this year, right? So if they say, okay, yeah, this is relevant with me, let's have another call next week, that's it. Confirm their email, that's it. And it's pretty much I just book in a call to share the insights around these three things. They find the insights helpful, then we start having that conversation. So very low to barrier. I tell them, okay, we're helping these C levels with the X three topics that are most relevant to them. If it's of relevancy, let's have a call next week to discuss further. That was it. And to be honest, I had about a 95% conversion rate from cold call. If someone picked up, I pretty much knew they were getting the call. And the other 5% was pretty much the saying, I'm about to go into a meeting. Can you call me in an hour's time or something like that?
That's remarkable. Do you
Yeah.
still do cold calling?
Yeah, I stick with cold calling. I do the cold calling training now, but I have mastered more of the LinkedIn generation and email for my business. So I still do cold calling to keep that muscle in. And there's no better feeling of booking a meeting through a cold call. You still get some kind of high from it, or I personally do. All the best cold callers that I know get high from it. When you book a meeting from an email, you don't get the same excitement. It's just not there. It's really exciting convincing a C-level, a CEO now that I speak with, of booking in and taking the time out of their day to speak with me. If it's from an email, it's very vanilla for me. It's not interesting.
So you're not that much into cold email.
I do cold email because I like to optimize all my channels. And I would do it at Gartner as well. And what was interesting was when I analyzed my deals, 90% of my deals were coming from as a result of cold calling. So I did an analysis of the meetings that I booked with LinkedIn and the meetings that I booked with email and the meetings I booked with cold calling. 90% of the deals were coming from the cold call route. So that's what I focused on. Each business is a bit different. And I also noticed that in Gartner when I do some training with individuals, some functions responded better to others in terms of cold calling or email. Some people had insane response rates through email, where in my practice it didn't exist. And I sold in two different practices in Gartner. And I could see the shift when I changed practices. And one of them, the emails nearly never got a response. The other one, there was probably a 20-30% increase in response rate. Just when I shifted the function, the messaging remained the exact same.
I guess in cold call, especially since you have to be so quick and you have a few seconds, it comes down to just knowing the pain points, listing them. They will identify with one of them. If yes, it goes.
Yeah,
If
and
not,
it's
they
really
identify.
simple. It's really simple as well because when I would do it, I would be disqualifying people. A lot of people try to qualify in, force to qualify in into the sales cycle. It's a lot easier to disqualify. So for me, if I knew, okay, these three pain points or whatever topic areas didn't resonate, probably would have been a waste of my time as well. Did I lose some deals because of it? Potentially, potentially. But when you only have 30 seconds to over time of a CFO or something like that, or a C-level, I'd rather qualify them in or qualify them out as quickly as possible. So then when I know I have that conversation, okay, these three topics are of interest, I can hop on a call and be like, okay, which one was most interesting? Why did these pique your interest? And it would usually lead to, okay, we're actually facing these problems, these challenges, etc. And you can go into a sales cycle a lot easier than saying, okay, your peers are actually struggling with this. Why are you not struggling with it? Right. And then they have to explain themselves as more of an interrogation.
Interesting. I like that. Also, I found that if somebody's not feeling a set of pain points very strongly, probably the result they will get from the service is also not going to be extraordinary.
Yeah,
Unless they are completely unaware, they do have those pain points, they just don't know it yet. But
100%.
it might be early for them anyway in the buying stage, and you have to keep them longer there. You have to educate them and then make them see what is going on.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a lot easier to get someone that's more actively feeling those pains than convincing them this is your pain. Let's go from there.
Yes, that was a mistake I made at the beginning. I was educating people in this is your pain when actually you just need to talk to the people who have that pain. It's way easier. They will come to you
Yeah,
on their own free will.
yeah, exactly. That's why I left it when I would do it. The emails would educate and whatever resonated there, you could have that wider net. But on the cold call, you have to be a lot more specific. And with my cold call, I know a lot of people where they do lots of research before the cold calls, 10, 15 minutes, just to get a no or not a pickup. And the most annoying thing is number doesn't even work when you call them. So you waste 15, 20 minutes of your time making a perfect intro pitch about the company research, which could be amazing, but they don't pick up, they never, or the number doesn't work, and then you've wasted your time, right? I'd rather have my three key points and I can just blitz through my list, call 20 times more people than others, and have more meetings than others because I know what's relevant to these key individuals.
What tools do you use right now for cold outreach?
Cold outreach, the main tool that I use is Instantly, and they're great. So the number one mistake I've seen with businesses at the moment is that they still do their email outreach through their main domain,
Hmm.
which is the number one mistake, right? Your domain is very valuable to your company, especially the .com. You don't want to burn it, you don't want to ruin the reputation. Right. So my biggest suggestion is if you have your main domain and you want to be doing email outreach, even with your sales team, you need to have at least separate domains. So say you're at business b2b.com is your business name. You should have b2b.io, .co.uk, .eu, etc., .net, and be doing email outreach from them. And you can code it. So if someone searches the .net, it still goes to your .com website. So it doesn't make a difference. But then this protects your domain and you can do the outreach through them. On top of that, what I found out, and this was a number one mistake when I was an enterprise, and I know this is leaving a lot of money on the table, is you get a lead list of say 4, 5, 600 people, you've prospected them out for the year 1,000, and you send all the emails on one day from your one email account and one email domain. That puts you in the spam filter 95% of the time these days, especially now Google's released the update, etc. Your emails aren't being seen. And what we would see in enterprises, okay, we'll do a change of voice. I'll get someone else to send emails to my list and I'll send it to their list. And all of a sudden, they book you 5 calls where you've been emailing this list for 6 months. And a lot of the time that I saw was when I hop on the call, they said, "Oh, I actually never got your emails. Let me check. They were in spam." Right. So you're not even getting in front of these individuals because you're doing too much volume from one email account. The sweet spot that I found is to protect the other domains as well, is to make as many domains. So I recommend 3 domains and then 3 to 6 actually. So let's stick with the 6 domains, 3 email accounts per domain. So you have 18 email accounts total and sending 35 emails per day from them. Very low volume. On instantly, you can set it so it sends every 15, 16 minutes. So it seems like you're actually typing these emails out. Still add the personalization in, but it's very low volume and you're put as a marketer, right? So it goes into the promotion tab, the spam tabs, whatever. You go into their main inbox. And then from there, you're still sending 630 emails a day. And if you have a massive list, the sky's the limit, right? Whereas from a single email, it's not there. And this way, it's maximizing your deliverability without harming anything. If I knew this back in the day, I would literally send 30 emails a day. I made the mistake, and I know lots of salespeople are doing this mistake, right? They have their one email account, they send 600 emails a day, or even 200 emails a day, it goes to spam, and it's never read. That's why I also think the cold calling worked a lot because they would never see the email. And all of a sudden, I send the calendar invite, and I'm in their inbox because the calendar invite goes straight to the inbox.
I think what puts people off with cold calling is that it is invasive, right? You literally enter in their life at any given moment, anything could be happening. That's what makes people uncomfortable with it, besides all the fact that you're calling a stranger and people don't like being on the phone.
Yeah, and there's a few. It's intimidating. Lots of people have literally said I'm scared to call the CEO. Right? What do I say when they pick up, etc. One thing that helped me was I didn't really care who I was calling. I viewed it as I'm calling a friend. I'm calling just a person. Right? Who are they? They're not above me. They're on my same level. They're just a person. It's just the title. And when I'll be on a sales floor, people would be like you spoke to him like it was nothing and it ends up being a CFO of a $50 billion company. I can't mention the companies because of NDAs, but yeah,
Not bad. Do you, if I remember correctly, instantly doesn't give lead lists. What do you use for lead lists? Because my favorite of the ones I tried last year it was a list kit.
yeah. So Instantly actually does have
Does?
this now. They released an update. So the good thing about them is they use the information. So you upload the list, right? Say from Apollo or something like that. The bounced ones they remove from their database. So every single day when people are sending emails to these, because some people do send multiple times, the ones that deliver actually go into the database. So you know the leads are actually active. The emails work. You don't have to check. But in order to expand it, I use a few things. I use Ocean.io, which is also great when you're comparing your current clients. So there they actually have a filter where you can put the domain of one of your current clients and it says, okay, these are the next 10 organizations that are similar to that. Because it's a lot easier to sell to a similar company you're already delivering to as opposed to another. So I use that and then they can also give you the contact details. I use Apollo a lot, but with Apollo, I make sure to scrub them. So I put them into a software called Million Verifier that verifies whether the email works. And from my experience, every list I put in from Apollo, about 65, 70% are good emails. The rest are inactive, bounce, terrible. But one pro tip that I do have is it's always good to get the other 30% and put them to another software that I use, which is called Scrubby. And that updates it with the most up-to-date emails. And those individuals have been targeted a lot less for marketing because
Okay.
everyone goes for the good ones that say, okay, these emails are good. I'm just going to email them. These are bad. It tells me it's bad. That's it. So their inboxes are a lot less full because their account shows up as a bad email deliverability through Apollo because most people use Apollo.
Mhm. Interesting. Something I heard recently, I interviewed the Frank Saunders, the CEO of Salesforce, and he mentioned that there is a slightly higher chance of open rates with Nordic countries.
Yeah.
They get less volume, they get less people bothering them.
Yeah. I've had many calls with the Nordics and it's a lot easier. They're a lot more open, but it does depend on your product and service as well because they have a very specific market. So, for example, I spoke with a Finnish company where we're going to support them now with their sales training, but they said that all our sales is done in Finnish. So one of my bottlenecks with them is actually reviewing their calls. So now I need someone else in the team to be translating it to me, but I still need to teach them the principles. Because the principles of sales are the same. But with their market, they say if we speak English, we're definitely not making the sell.
Hmm.
It's really interesting because they all speak English.
Could AI save you there?
It can,
Translation.
it can potentially. We're going more of I'm optimizing the actual sales process, what they're asking. So the core reviews, they have a sales manager that can do that.
Mhm.
So I'm focused on other areas, but the interesting thing was more about okay, they only speak Finnish. This is the problem, right? It's a very, very small market. You
Yes.
can't expand it. It's not even like going from there to Sweden or Norway. We only target companies in Finland. If you don't speak Finnish in the sales cycle, it does not work.
Fascinating. Quite a
Yeah.
quite a challenge, right?
Interesting challenge, but when you're in a niche of a niche, you can make a lot more money and charge higher prices.
Yes, especially probably if you have quality ICP information, you can just compete on knowing the ICP better than the others,
Yeah,
training
definitely.
them their teams properly.
Yeah, definitely. And one approach that I like to use with my clients is the mass email is amazing, right? It's a lot easier to sell to people saying, yes, your addressable market's 20,000 people, you get 1% response rate. Great, that's 200 meetings booked, right? Simple, easy. We can optimize, get to 5%, that's 1,000 meetings for the next year, right? It's a lot easier to sell on them. But the problem is you are spamming. Like, there's no joke about it. You are spamming people. It's a great arrow to have and
Mhm.
use. But another approach that's really resonated with my clients now is what we call the Dream 100. I've not coined the term, it's been around for quite a while. And I would use this in Gartner, right? We would get a specific lead, we get territory, right? So I'll be capped at how many people I can actually target. So you have to be very specific. And a lot of my clients prefer this approach because they do want to build a longer term relationships. They want to hit strategic accounts, not just anyone. So we've sat down and listed, okay, these are the 100 companies we would love to work with, or 100 individuals we would love to work with. And we build our omni-channel approach where, okay, we're sending an email, we're connecting them with LinkedIn, we're giving them a cold call, we're sending them a gift, writing a letter. You'll be surprised at how much writing a letter has got us meetings because no one gets letters anymore. And there's softwares now as well where you can do a handwritten letter on email and
Amazing.
show them. So it's all about having that creativity. But if someone starts seeing your name a lot often, they will book a meeting with you. If they say, hey, Alex reached out to me on LinkedIn, I got the email from him 3 days later, and then like, I liked this post on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I cold call you and say, hey, I really liked your post on LinkedIn about AI. I was actually just calling about having considered XYZ. It's a lot warmer getting in, even though it's completely cold.
I like it. We're giving away too many secrets here, man. I'm gonna have to censor the podcast in
Yeah.
private section.
You should put in a private section for the community.
Yes, yeah, it's gonna be public, but I love it. Listen, we cracked an hour, so
No.
I'm gonna be mindful of your time. Do you have anything you can share with the audience you want to share? Where can they find you?
Yeah, definitely. So over the next month, I'm going to be running 10 free consulting sessions with B2B businesses looking to grow. So there, what it consists of is sit down, analyze your current outbound strategies, your current sales process, And then you get a free 6 month growth plan from myself of what you need to do improvement to hit whatever goal it is. So if you're looking to be scaling in 2025, more than happy to sit down with you. And I'm only doing this for the 10 next client.
Oh, wow, people, if you miss this one, this is painful. So
Yeah.
take that on. Alex, last thing. Do you have an opinion nobody agrees with you on that you still stand by?
Opinion that nobody agrees on. Let me have a think.
Can be about anything. Business can be about outreach. Just you pick it.
Yeah. Yeah. That cold calling is dead. Everyone thinks cold calling is dead. I disagree. And I think throughout this podcast, I've discussed enough that it was generating most of my revenue, still does generate a lot of my revenue. So if cold calling is definitely not dead, and outbound is never going to die. People think we're going for ads, ads is the new way, warm outreach. It's not. The cheapest, best way of getting leads and clients is still outbound, getting a face in front of them.
Interesting because, I was consulting somebody on Tuesday
Yeah.
and we were talking about things to do to grow their business. And I know one of their biggest competitors. And I told him, do you see this thing they have been doing for the last 5 years? And he goes, oh, yes, but, I don't think people do it. I don't think it works that well anymore because people don't behave that way. He tries to bring me some argument about how the market behavior changed. But I go, if this is a big company and they be doing the same thing for 5 years, there must be a business case to what they're doing. They're not just wasting budget and being a market leader for no reason or by virtue of magic. So why don't you try to, of course, you don't have the budget to do the same thing, but you can scale it down and have a different targeting and still get the same result. Because if they do it, it works.
Yeah.
And I'm referring to here to like the Gartner thing. If Gartner is doing it and it's working, it's not dead.
Well, that's what I say to a lot of my clients. Like, if one of the biggest organizations still do cold outreach, who are you when you're making 1 million a year to say, "Oh, I don't believe in that. It doesn't work." Like, you need the perspective. If LeBron James is shooting hoops every single day, right, and he tells you you need to do 1,000 a day to be in the NBA, who are you to say, "No, I'll stick to 100, but do it slowly"? I just listen to the experts, right?
Tell me your results. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Listen, people, this was Alex Lee. Check him out on LinkedIn. Uh, like book a meeting with him, start doing your outreach, fix your positioning, improve the pipeline, shorten the sales cycle, make more money. It's beautiful.
Make more money. That's the end of the goal, right? Every business needs more revenue, more money. Makes
Yes.
the world go round.
Yes. Don't you want to keep the economy going great? Please make more money.
Exactly. Speak with me if you want to make more money.
Yes. You got two experts here. You just have to pick. Not even that, we don't even compete. So you just have to call
You
us.
can, you can work on the ICP, I'll work on the delivery.
Yes, we don't even compete. I can fix your positioning. Alex can fix your entire pipeline, and that's it. That's a money printing recipe, people. You got plenty of value with this episode. Alex, any last words?
Thanks so much for having me and looking forward to the next episode.
Same. I think we'll have you back again to talk about sales since today was about outreach. And people, this was the Tech of Tomorrow podcast, episode number, I don't know because I don't count them anymore. See you on the next episode.